Homework Hotline, what is your emergency?
Welcome to the Homework Hotline, a show where the three of us answer your questions live on air.
We're here to help you with any problems you're having with your homework.
Do you need help with math? Becca and I can help you. I'm Nathan, and the two of us teach math at Emily Griffith High School.
And if you need help with science, I'm here for you. I'm Sam, and I teach at the Contemporary Learning Academy.
We are live every Tuesday and Wednesday from 4:30 to 5:30.
And you can call us here at 720-424-1666. When you call in, we can help you a little bit more in depth, and you can also watch us while we answer your question. We could also ask you some clarifying questions to make sure that you're actually understanding what we're answering.
So you can watch our show in several different ways. For live broadcasts, you can watch us on Comcast, Channel 22, Prism TV, Channel 8007, livestream.com, just search for DPS TV 22. You could watch us on Facebook Live at EG Homework or YouTube at Denver DPS TV.
And since today is Wednesday, we are also going to have a science experiment, or a science demonstration actually, with Sam. I hear the demo might cure bitterness.
Nate, all of the things you heard might be right, but you'll need to keep watching to find out.
So though we prefer that you call us, we do understand that you also like to use social media. We have social media monitoring, Jeff at social media monitoring for your questions. I'm sorry, blank there, Jeff.
Oh, that's okay.
I don't know why, but we have Jeff here monitoring your questions on social media.
That's right. I am monitoring social media, and I have all the questions, and I will get these questions from here on social media to the experts on the set. And I'm also the what you call the trivia master, and I have a bunch of trivia questions, and we have a trivia question that we give at the beginning of each show, and we want you guys to call in and answer the question. And if you answer the question correctly, you will get a prize. So this is really cool, and we have a very kind of peculiar question today, and this is about a festival, and it says, what peculiar festival takes place in Fruita, Colorado every May? All right, this is a festival that takes place in Fruita, Colorado. So what is that festival? It's kind of peculiar, but let us know.
All right, so if you do let us know, as Jeff mentioned, there are prizes, symphony tickets, but let's give you our contact information so that you can get your questions to Jeff, or you can get us an answer for that trivia question. So as we mentioned before, the phone number is on the top of the screen, and that'll be there throughout the show, but you can get a hold of us on social media at Facebook or Twitter at EG Homework. You could also text your questions or your trivia question to answer to us at 970-680-3771, or you could send us an email at homework@emilygriffith.edu. So all of those different ways you can get a hold of us. All right, let's go back to Jeff and get some of your questions answered.
All right, so we got an exciting one here. I know past couple days, shows or days we've been talking about basketball a lot, and I know that everybody's somebody named Nate is a big basketball fan. So we have a question about basketball here. It says, Nate loves basketball. When he takes it to the hole, he sinks his shot 65% of the time. If Nate takes 30 shots, how many baskets will he make?
Well, that seems pretty easy. I think if Nate takes 30 shots, he makes 30 baskets, right?
Yeah, it doesn't seem like Nate's very good at basketball.
Nate loves basketball, but basketball doesn't love Nate. Is that right?
All right, well, we will live in this alternate reality just for the sake of this math problem, where Nate only makes 65% of his shots.
Sounds good.
All right,
Nate
so
seems pretty confident. But.
All right, so he makes 65% of his shots.
And he takes 30 shots.
And takes 30. And Becca, I always liked how you broke this down into like what percentage means. So it makes a lot more sense, I think. Otherwise, it just becomes this like, oh, you should just move the decimal place over 2 to the right or 2 to the left, and then you should multiply it. But I think if you, like Becca has mentioned a couple times, if you really think about like what percent means and apply that, then it makes a lot more sense, and you don't have to memorize like these kind of steps. So I'm just going to steal what you said.
Okay.
All right, so 65 per cent literally means per 100, right? So if you think about the word cent, I tell my students this all the time, so you should feel good about that. They hear this a
Good.
lot. If you think about like what cent means, you hear century, there are 100 cents in a dollar. Centipede doesn't have 100 legs, but it has a lot of legs, so they call it a centipede. Right? They don't have 100 legs.
They generalize, yes.
Oh, they don't really
Okay.
have 100 legs?
They have
There might be some that do, but
yeah, they have a lot
They
of
just
legs.
say 100 because it's a lot?
I'll get right back to you on that.
Sam, I need to
think
get
Nate
into
is
that
right.
with you. I
Yeah,
have no idea. Anyway, sorry.
So what this literally means is 65 per 100. So if this Nate character were to take 100 shots, he would make theoretically 65 out of them. So we can write that as a fraction. We can say 65, or a proportion, out of every 100 shots. Now, we want to know how many he'll make if he takes 30 shots. So we want to say if he took 30 shots, how many will he make? And we don't know, so we're going to put an X here. So what we're saying is, because we're talking about percentages, and percentages can often be thought of as proportions, meaning for every 100 shots he takes, he makes 100. Well, we're going to apply that exact same proportion, and it should have the same value. We're going to say that he should make some number out of 30. So there's a couple ways to do this. The way that you are probably familiar with is cross multiplying, where you just take this and you multiply straight across. So 65 times 30 is going to be 1950. Yeah, that's right. Okay. And then we're going to cross multiply here, and we're going to get equals 100x. Now, I'm not going to get too into this, but if you think about this, like I'm going to write this down again really quick. 65 over 100 equals x over 30. This cross multiplication that you're used to doing is really just a shortcut for all the math skills that you've learned anyway. Like if you're solving for x, you would multiply this side by 30 to isolate the variable. You'd have to do the same thing to this side. These cancel out, and you would be left with x equals 1,950 divided by 100, and then you would multiply by 100. Or, well, if you did multiply by 100, that's where you're going to get that 1950 equals 100x. So if you ever forget about cross multiplication, remember your algebra skills always apply when you're solving for variables. This cross multiplication, this is a shortcut. And it works whenever we have two terms on each side with fractions, and we have a variable in one of the fractions. So from here, we just do our last algebra step. We divide by 100, divide by 100, and in this unrealistic scenario, Nate only makes 19.5 of his shots. So not 30 like I would make, but let's not get into that. Again, I want to emphasize, like, this is a theoretical, because he's not going to make exactly 65% of every single shot. Like, this is over kind of a long term. And he also could not make 19.5 shots.
Yeah, I was going to say, how do you make a half shot?
Right. Maybe you just hit the rim or something. So on average, every 30 shots, you would make 19.5. So hopefully that helps. But again, if you just understand some like more theoretical, like what percent means, what cross multiplication means, then there's a lot less of this like, oh no, I forgot how to cross multiply. What do I do now? I'm just going to leave this one blank.
Right.
So.
Also, with percents, I guess I'll add this in. There are always a lot of different methods around it.
Absolutely.
And that understanding of for every 100 makes it nice, because there's not just one way to kind of solve percent problems, but if you understand what it means, you can maybe figure out another way to do it.
Yeah.
So know what it means. Ask your teachers. All right, let's go back to Jeff.
All right, let's go back. And but 65%, that's probably NBA quality though, right?
I was gonna say, like, isn't
Yeah.
65% really good?
That's pretty good.
Well, it depends on who you're playing against. I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was just free throw shots.
Next
taking it to the
science-
hole.
Next
Okay.
science demo.
All right,
we're gonna
let's go
put a
back to
little
science.
basket
We have some
hoop in
cell
here,
questions.
and we'll see.
It better
So-
be regulation, though. I mean, it's totally going to throw me off.
Regulation height. We'll take a video camera out to the basketball court.
Yeah.
Really?
Well, then there's wind and stuff. I don't
We're
know.
gonna settle this.
I could dunk too back in the day too.
Oh, and then Jeff will dunk.
Yeah.
And it'll be a whole
You
show.
can dunk on the little Nerf hoop on the door.
Oh yeah. I can do like a 360. So we have some cell questions.
Yeah,
now
come on, hit
for
me.
science. So now,
Hit me.
There's 3 parts to this, and it says, what type of cell can make its own food?
Sure.
What is the function of a cell membrane?
Uh-huh.
And what are the 4 levels of organization in living things?
Okay, so great questions. All right, so these all sound like biology questions, maybe all for a cell project, where we're thinking about what cells are, how they function, and how they fit into like the larger scheme of life. So let's just start with the first question. So which type of cell can make its own food? So I think the first thing that needs to be said is, broadly speaking, there are 2 kinds of cells in the world. There are cells that make their own food and cells that need to take things in from outside of themselves, in other words, eat something, to be able to get energy. So cells that make their own food are called autotrophs, and cells that need to take something in from outside are called heterotrophs. So broadly speaking, all cells are either autotrophs or heterotrophs. The main type of cell that we think of as making its own food, as being kind of the classic autotroph, is a plant cell. So all plant cells have within them, or all green plant cells, I should say. And if we can actually jump to my screen, I'll show sort of a picture of this. But within cells, there are small functioning units called organelles, like small organs. And if you can see right here, where I'm putting my magnifying glass guy, let me just make this big here. This marks the chloroplast here, this little green sac. A chloroplast is an organelle inside of a cell that uses the energy of sunlight to combine carbon dioxide and water into sugar. So this is like a little functioning unit inside of the cell that can make sugar for the cell to eat. And the amazing thing about plants is that they can do that for themselves. There's also another kind of cell often talked about. Certain bacteria have the ability to do this, and a really common one would be cyanobacteria. So here's a really simple image of a cyanobacteria. And cyanobacteria don't have that same organelle, the chloroplast, but they do have a sort of free-floating thylakoid membrane, this thing here, that allows them to make sugar again, using the energy of the sun to combine H2O and CO2, water and carbon dioxide. So those are the types of cell that can make its own food. I should also throw in there, these are called photoautotrophs, the autotrophs that make their food from light, the energy from the sun. There's another kind of autotroph called a chemoautotroph. They're much more rare, but for example, in the depths of caves and deep in the earth where there still are living things that don't see sunlight, there are actually food chains that are based on bacteria that eat chemicals in their environment, or essentially use chemicals in their environment to make their own food in-house. So that they're also known as autotrophs. They don't really eat the chemicals, I shouldn't say, they use energy from those chemicals to make their own food. Anyways, autotrophs make their own food. The second one is, what is the function of a cell membrane? All cells need a barrier to contain themselves and close themselves. And the cell membrane is that basic barrier. All of our cells have it. Plant cells have an additional layer. If we could just jump back to my screen really fast. Plant cells have an additional layer called the cell wall that I'm sort of indicating here. So the membrane is sort of a squishy barrier that encloses the cell. And then the cell wall is a more rigid barrier around it. Animals, like ourselves, do not have cell walls. We just have cell membranes on the outsides of our cells. And I'll just show really quickly sort of a view, close up of what a cell membrane looks like. Cell membranes are these kind of large, they're called phospholipid bilayers. They're made of essentially fats that contain a phosphate group. That's something I can talk about some other time. But basically, cell membranes enclose your cells. The last thing asks, what are the 4 levels of organization in living things? This is one of those instances where, depending on the person that you learn biology from or your approach to learning biology, you may hear that there are, or read that there are 4 levels of organization. You might read that there are 5 or 6 or, maybe even more. what we tend to think of levels of organization, we're talking about going from the smallest units of a living thing to the largest units. So typically the levels of organization are going smallest to largest, cell at the smallest level. Then above that you get tissues. Tissues are groups of cells all of the same type. So like muscle tissue, for example. Your muscles are made up of a consistent type of cell called muscle cells, and that's muscle tissue. Larger than tissues are organs. Organs are complexes of functioning tissues. So your heart, for example, is made up of different types of tissues, muscle tissue being one of the main ones there. And it's an organ, it functions, it has its own function and does something for your body. And then the next level, the fourth level, would be the organism itself. Sometimes in between organ and organism, you get organ system. So we might talk about how your stomach, large intestine, and small intestine are all individual organs, but they are one singular organ system because they function together. Your skeletal system and your muscular system are different organs, but we would think of them as sort of something that works together. So you might add a layer in there. You could go beyond the organism to think about ecosystem. That could be level 6. And you could go beyond ecosystem to think about biome. That might be level 7. But this is just a way to organize smallest unit of a living thing up to largest unit. So.
All right. Let's go back to Jeff.
All right, back over here. I have an interesting question here. It's a math question, or maybe more geometry, I guess. I really don't know it myself. But it says, which single transformation is shown below? And it's got a triangle here and a triangle there. And it has a list that says translation, rotation, reflection, or none of the above.
Yeah, I can take that one. So this really comes down to like knowing what these transformations are called. So some of them are a little bit more straightforward than others. Like they just, if you think about what the word means, they make a little bit more sense. Like you probably know that a rotation is when you spin something. I was trying to think of how I can show you this on my screen without drawing it too much. Let's do this. So translation is literally, like these are all different types of geometric transformations. So these are called rigid transformations because they're literally not changing the shape of anything at all. I'm holding this calculator because I'm going to use it as an example. I'm just kind of holding it up. So when we talk about rigid transformation, it's literally like taking something like this calculator and I'm not changing the shape at all. So think like rigid is like kind of non-moving, not flexible. So translation would be like me just moving this over. So when we're talking about a transformation, like a translation would just be like me making a copy of this and then moving it. When we talk about a rotation, again, it's a rigid transformation. Nothing is changing this calculator. We're just like rotating it, spinning it around. We could rotate it 360 degrees back to where it is. We could rotate it 90 degrees, rotate it 45 degrees. But again, you notice nothing's really changing. It looks exactly the same, but we're just kind of spinning it around. Then we have a reflection, which I can't really do with this, but a reflection is every time you look in the mirror, you see a reflection of your face. And you could also note, it's hard to notice because when you always look at yourself in a mirror, you don't really get to see yourself without kind of some sort of reflection, but everything's backwards. And a good example of this is a reflection is if you've ever seen like an ambulance.
I was just looking at that's
Yeah.
so funny. I was just
So
looking that up.
I'm going to pull this up really quick. Reflection. If you ever see an ambulance and you see the front of it, the word ambulance is written backwards. If you could pull up my screen. What you see here is that word is always written backwards. And there's a reason for that. It's not because every ambulance painter
in Italy.
messed up.
That's Florence.
It's actually because, yeah, that's why. Yeah,
Aw.
it's spelled differently. Let's look at this one. American ambulance. All right. So anytime you see an ambulance, the word is spelled backwards because what they're thinking is when you're driving your car and you hear the siren, you're going to look in your mirror and they want you to quickly be able to identify that there's an ambulance. I guess the sirens and the sound, if that doesn't give it away, now you see that word ambulance and you'd see it written kind of more like on the top. So in this case, they have it written both ways. This is what you typically see. So reflection, we're not changing the shape of it, we're just kind of flipping it. So that would be a reflection. Now, the interesting thing, let's say I were to draw, let me just sketch this triangle. So this is what it looked like. We start with this triangle. If I were to translate it, I would literally just be moving it. I could move it like this direction, maybe I move it down, and I have the exact same triangle. And the image we were talking about, I should draw that over here. This is the original kind of transformation we're talking about. It looks like this, and then over here, it looks like this. So this is what we're looking for. What kind of transformation? Oh, and I should say what single. Let me see if I can fit this in here. Because that word single you're going to see is really important in this scenario. Okay. What single kind of transformation goes from this, I'm going to highlight in yellow, to make this figure look like this? Now, if you look at the translation, everything's kind of in the same order, so it's not a translation. Like this is what a translation would look like. So it's not that, because you notice like everything's like flipped a little bit. It's not just moving, it's also, there's something else happened to it. Now, the interesting thing is if we look at, I'm going to skip rotation for a second. If we think about a reflection, well, if you were to reflect, again, this triangle, these are getting worse as I draw more of them. If you were to reflect it across, like, say, this line, imagine there was a mirror here. My new triangle over here, my new image would look like this. Now, this doesn't quite look like this. This is what's called reflecting over the y-axis. But if we were to reflect it again across this, then it would look like this, kind of. Now, if you notice, that actually looks like the transformation we originally talked about. Where'd it go? Right? It went from this over here, which you can't see, this over here to this. It did change to that because it reflected once, and if we reflected it one more time, it would look like what we're hoping for. But this is why I said it was really important that we use this term single transformation, because that is two reflections. We want one reflection. So if you could imagine that we took this triangle and we rotated it, and say we rotated it around this point, it looks like we just took this triangle and we spun it around. So this would be the single transformation would be a rotation. Now, I think an important reason is if you're trying to figure out right now which kind of transformation it is, I would guess the next thing coming up is how do you perform that transformation? It's really hard to draw this transformation like on a coordinate plane. So what you're going to find is that when we talk about a rotation, it really is just a reflection two times, like that. It has the same end effect. So what you're probably going to find when your teacher is teaching you how to kind of draw this transformation, this rotation, they will probably tell you to just reflect and reflect again. And that's one way to get that rotation effect without having to rotate every point in that way. So hopefully that helped, but it really comes down to think about what those words mean in general, like what reflection means. So you're just applying it to geometry. And what rotation means, you're just applying it to geometric figures. And same with translation, just moving around.
Awesome. All right. I think we have time for another science question.
We do, yes.
Let's do that.
And we got a science question here. It has to do with matter.
Yeah.
So now this person wants to know, for an object to be considered matter, it must consist of weight or volume, mass and volume, mass and weight.
Mm-hmm.
So which one of those is it? And then isn't gray matter your brain? Isn't that what that's called?
Yeah, there's a portion of your brain that's referred to as gray matter.
Okay.
Okay, so I think thinking about this question, not only can we just talk about this, so what we're really talking about is the difference between weight, volume, and mass, which are things that are kind of similar to each other, but then also you can sort of look at this as how do you answer these kinds of questions? How do you tackle a multiple choice question when it comes at you like this? That we can sort of just do process of elimination here, if we know what these things are. So the volume of something is how much space a thing takes up. And we're going to say that it's true that if something is matter and it exists, it must take up some space in wherever it is. So volume is going to be something that's necessary for something to be matter. Mass is going to be another necessary thing. Mass is the stuff that makes something up. So you've got volume is like the space it takes up. Mass is how much of that stuff that you really have, the quantity of it. Weight is the one that doesn't belong here, and I think one of the problems can be that we often conflate mass and weight. We think that they're the same thing, but they're not. Mass, again, is a measurement of how much stuff is in something. If we talk about the mass of my water cup here, we're talking about the amount of stuff inside it. I would give a measurement in grams, and it would refer to the amount of material that makes it up. But if we talked about the weight, we might give the weight in, let's say, pounds. And although we can think about a conversion between pounds and grams, ultimately weight is really a measurement of a mass multiplied by an acceleration. Weight is actually a measurement of a force. And the reason that that's important is you might say, well, the mass of something is very closely related to how much force it has going down, so why don't we just call them the same thing? Well, the mass of this cup, the amount of stuff inside it would not change were it here or were it on the moon, let's say. Still the same cup, still made of the same stuff. But the weight of the object will change in both cases because on the Earth, the mass of this object is being multiplied by the acceleration of gravity on the Earth, which is creating a force that pulls the cup downwards. On the moon being a smaller celestial object, has less of a gravitational pull, and so we're going to get that same mass multiplied by an acceleration, but a lower force because the acceleration is smaller. Anyways, thinking about this question a little bit, if we can just be sure that we know that weight is a force and eliminate that one, it's clear that we just have to make the choice between weight, volume, and mass. Since an object can exist out in space and not be subject to gravity, it doesn't need to have a weight. So it doesn't need to have a force, but it always has to have mass, and it always has to have volume. Yeah?
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, we've got a caller right now, so we're going to get that question answered.
Exciting.
All right. Hello?
Hello?
Hi, how are you?
I'm good.
Good, thanks for calling. You have a math question?
How are you? Yes. I want to know the normal distribution in percentages.
Something's going on with the studio speaker. I can't hear you very well. Could you try one more time?
I want to know the normal distribution curve percentages.
Oh, the percentages for that.
distribution.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I can
That's
definitely
doable.
give you that.
Yeah.
So, are you familiar with standard deviation? Hello? Caller?
I would say you should go over
Caller, can
standard
I ask
deviation
your
for
name?
sure.
Samia.
What's your name?
Samia.
Samia?
Yes.
Okay, Samia. Are you familiar with standard deviations?
Yes.
Okay, so you know what I mean when I say one standard deviation away from the mean?
Yes.
Okay, I'm pulling an image up on my screen so our viewers can see as well. But one deviation away from the mean is going to be 34.1% on either side.
Okay.
So in total, if you're within one standard deviation of the mean, that probability would be 68.3%.
Sorry.
And then if you're 2 standard deviations away, in between 1 and 2, it's 13.6%.
Okay.
And so total, if you're 2 standard deviations, I'm going to zoom this in real quick. If you're 2 standard deviations away from the curve, that total probability would be 95.4%.
Okay.
Okay, and then 3 standard deviations away, so between 2 and 3 is going to give you 2.1%.
Okay.
And then total, so if you're going 3 standard deviations away from the mean, that total probability is going to be 99.7% away.
Okay.
And so all you're left with is that 0.3%, which kind of, you almost cover that in the 4th standard deviation. Does that make sense? All of that to you, what I said?
Yeah, so the percentages is equal on both sides, 13.6 and 2.1, and then 0.1%?
Yes, so 34.1%, 13.6%, 2.1%, and then 0.1%.
Okay.
Did I answer your question, everything that you needed?
Yes, right now. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, call back if you have any other questions. Thank you for calling. Hey, did you want to try to answer our trivia question, by the way, before you go?
Yes.
Sure. Okay, Jeff, give her the trivia question.
All right, the trivia question is, what peculiar festival takes place in Fruita, Colorado every May? It's a nice little peculiar
hear it?
festival. Did you hear the question?
I don't know.
I didn't know either.
It's a really weird festival.
It is. Yeah, it's strange.
Watermelon festival, pumpkin festival.
Hey, that was a really good guess.
Good guess, but
Was that not it?
no, I'm sorry.
It's
No.
actually much weirder than that.
Yeah,
It's really
it's
weird.
strange.
Well, if
Not a pumpkin.
Well, if you think of an answer, give us a call back. But awesome. Thank you so much for calling, and definitely call us again if you have any more questions, okay?
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right, bye.
All right. Bye. Awesome. So we had hopefully we answered our question. We were talking about the normal curve, and I'm going to explain that a little bit more to our viewers, but she was in Algebra 2, I would assume, because that's the where we cover that content. So it would be in Algebra 2 stuff, but we'll definitely cover that if we have more questions. But I think it is time for our science demonstration. So we're going to go take a little break, and when we come back, we will see the science demo.
There's times when you wander and ponder all the labels you've received.
Believe me, I've got a few. Never mind from when, why, or how.
'Cause now, everything's different. I found the perfect place.
A space where the labels fade and I'm accepted and supported.
Check what the news reported. Emily Griffith helped all who wish to learn.
Turn towards your future while you finish the basics on your time.
Prime opportunity in this mature environment.
The only requirement is motivation and thirst for success.
Invest in your passions. There's no limit to how far you'll go.
And know that you'll have something in common with everyone here.
We all chose empowerment over standing still in fear.
Back to the science lab, guys. We are going to do something that's not really a science experiment today, more just sort of a demo, talking a little bit about food. It's almost Thanksgiving, so I was thinking about cranberries. I'm going to try to tie them in, but we're really just going to talk about food preservation. So, guys, we're going to talk about curing stuff.
Curing.
Have you guys ever heard of curing food?
I've heard of a
Yes.
cured ham, but that's about it.
Exactly. When ham gets really sick, you cure it. I had to get that in. But yeah, cured ham is a great example. We're going to talk about cured meats as we go along here. What do you guys think curing is, and why do you think it exists?
Does it mean like drying something out?
It can involve drying, but it is not necessarily about the drying.
It's for preservation, right?
Yeah, so preservation is going to be one of the main reasons we do it. So going back throughout history, human beings have needed to eat food, and a lot of times we have come across food and wanted to keep it for a while for times when there won't be food. So curing is a form of preservation, or really curing is sort of a blanket term for all different kinds of preservation that we do.
Okay.
Okay, so we go to the next slide here for me. So we could jump to my computer screen really quick. So this is sort of a basic primer on curing here, and we'll talk about sort of scientifically what it is. But curing is the process of preserving something and making food edible using salt, sugar, and acid.
So is like beef jerky a form of curing then?
Beef jerky is a form of curing, absolutely. And that there's a portion of that is drying it out, but one of the things that we want to do there is just make sure there's no fluid, but then it's mainly salt that does the curing and keeps it preserved.
So like pastrami and stuff like that, would that be considered?
Pastrami is also a cured meat,
Okay.
absolutely. So let's just talk about some of the stuff that I have here because it's kind of cool, and I'm sure you guys have seen all of it. So first of all, what's this?
Coffee beans.
Coffee beans.
Yeah, coffee beans. And I had wanted to get uncured coffee beans that had not gone through any processing, but wasn't able to get some for the show. So I just have standard roasted coffee beans for us, right? But like, what is a coffee bean and where does it come from? Do you guys have any
Colombia?
sense? Some coffee beans come from Colombia.
I mean, they come from a plant.
They come from
Yeah,
a plant.
the
The
coffee
beans
plant.
just like hang off the tree and like we just pick them and
Yes.
we make coffee out of them, right? So I did not know this for years. I had the opportunity a few years ago to camp on a coffee plantation in Asia. It was amazing. And coffee beans are originally coffee berries.
Oh.
So if you actually jump to the next slide here. Oh, one more. Uno más, sorry. This is what a coffee plant looks like in the real world, and it almost really does look like, some kind of fruity berry that you would eat off a tree. There's lots of other berries that it honestly kind of looks like cranberries, although cranberries don't quite grow like that.
Wow, that is amazing. Actually, I always kind of assumed coffee beans were like in the ground or something.
Yeah, or like in a pod,
Or always
maybe.
looked like this. Yeah,
I
or
was
in a
thinking
pod.
a pod,
or,
yeah.
Yeah.
That looks nothing like coffee.
I didn't know
bean.
they'd be red too.
Yeah.
And so they're berries, and they have all this flesh on the outside that really doesn't get used. You peel off the flesh, you skin the flesh off, and then at that point you're left with this bean inside this little seed, and it's actually green.
Oh.
And one of the things that you want to do is you actually have to ferment it at this point. So you'll put it into water, often some kind of salty water, and allow bacteria to grow and start to munch on the bean. And the longer you leave it in there, the more acidic that the bean can get. And so if you guys know, some coffee has a little bit of acidity to it.
Right.
It's one of the, or bitterness, sometimes you pick it up as that. But that has to do with that fermentation process. When you want to stop that, you roast it, and that's what gives them their kind of roasty and brown color.
Okay.
I would have never thought that came from that.
Yeah.
Right, it's kind of incredible, isn't it? And it's just one of those things, and coffee is definitely a luxury food item. It's not something that our ancestors would have needed to cure or ferment for survival purposes, although I do feel like I
think-
need coffie for
Right.
survival purposes.
It's become a necessity.
So I'm really glad that we have that ability to do that. The next thing I want to talk about here are olives, because I just am so fascinated by olives. I totally love them. Do you guys know the difference between the two olives that we have here?
Green olives and black olives?
Very nice. And are they like different species of olives? Like how did one get green and one get black?
No idea. I don't eat olives. I don't know.
And it
I'm gonna
actually-
eat them today, but
You are welcome to, and you also don't have to. I'm not going to force you guys, but I'd
I'm
love
gonna
it if
try
you would
it.
try them.
It's like
so
one of them grow on a tree and one of them grows maybe somewhere else.
it's a great guess. They both grow on a tree.
Oh.
Nate, you want to take a stab?
I have no
the
idea.
fermentation process?
So it actually has to do with when you start the fermentation process. So really, these are just more ripe
Newer.
and less ripe
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
of the same fruit.
Babies.
Yeah.
And they stay the same color because they're preserved.
Because they're preserved, exactly. And so, and olives, if you could find an olive tree in a great place, if you ever have a chance, if you're in Southern California, there are lots of them. And I was reading that literally tons of olives get wasted every year in California. They just fall off the trees and rot in the ground. But that's because you can't go and pick an olive off a tree and eat it. It's woody and bitter and really inedible. But through the process of soaking it in salt, over time, we can actually get, again, bacteria to work on the molecules inside the olives, break them down, and make them edible. So we'll do a little bit of interactive stuff here, guys. Why don't you all eat a green olive? One of you might need to take a toothpick from the black olive. And you can actually keep that toothpick if you want. It can just be your toothpick.
Not a
So
fan.
although you may
Well,
not like it, just describe the flavors to me and what do you think is going on in there?
Oh, it's really
It's salty. Really
Salty for sure.
Yeah,
Salty.
really
It's got
salty.
some kind of I don't know.
Was it like vinegar?
It's really, yeah.
Clearly, everybody loves olives over here.
Right, I'm a gigantic olive fan.
I like olives.
But it's totally fine, but you can taste that salt,
It's
right, which is
salty,
part of
yeah.
that. How's the flesh? Would you describe it as really firm? Really,
No.
how would you describe it?
Kind of soft.
Yeah, and ultimately, if you were
Easy to chew,
if you were
yeah.
to take an olive off the tree, it would not be easy to chew. It would be very woody. But it's that curing process that allows them to be edible. And this is something olives were useful going back millennia, and are really a prized food possession. We think of olive oil as being so valuable, right? But eating olives like this, you're unable to do it without curing them, without using either an acid or a salt or a sugar to do it.
Is there really such thing as an olive garden? I mean, I know there's a restaurant, but like an olive garden?
Yeah, there are definitely olive plantations.
Oh.
And I have been to a few in Spain. They're amazing. Olive trees are these like craggy, bent trees. They're so beautiful. And if you ever go to Granada, Spain, and go check out the olive plantations, they are extremely beautiful. But yeah, I don't know if you would call that a garden necessarily.
All right.
But if you guys want to try a black olive and compare sort of the ripe to unripe, Jeff, I think you actually ate a black olive to start.
I did, yeah.
Do you want to try a green one?
Yeah, why
Here?
not? Sure.
And just tell me about differences in flavor and what would you think there?
I don't know how I would describe it.
Black olive
It's like
is
more
def-
earthy or like, I don't know.
And really, that's
Like
just
less fresh tasting? I don't know.
yeah, absolutely. Less, a little bit like less tartness, a little bit probably more mushy, and that just has to do with the fruit being a little bit further along in the ripeness process.
So this is considered a fruit.
Yes, absolutely. So
okay.
really, anything produced by a flower from a tree is considered a fruit.
Okay.
It's a pretty broad definition. We sort of conflate vegetables and fruits. Okay, so I'm gonna make you guys eat some more weird stuff, okay? But you're just gonna have to
I
put
think
up
that's
with
the
it.
worst of it.
Okay, well, so now we have cranberries. And if we could actually jump to the next screen, if we could jump back to my computer screen really quickly, I just want to show you uncured olives when they're picked from the tree. They really are all different colors. You would maybe separate them out later to have just green olives or black olives. And again, they look fairly similar, but they would not be very edible at that point. If we could skip to the next one. Okay, so thinking about cranberries, the reason that this sort of relates to cranberries and Thanksgiving, I'm making the connection, light though it is that we would make something from cranberries called cranberry preserves, right? What are cranberry preserves?
It's like the stuff you make cranberry sauce out of, I guess.
Yeah, in a way. What preserves is just sort of a fancy word for what?
Jelly.
Jelly, jam, right?
Jam.
So, and it literally, that old word preserve was just, we're preserving it. We're cooking it down and mixing it with sugar. And one of the neat things is that sugar is this really preserving chemical. Sugar along with salt and acids is something that allows us to can and preserve things. So cranberries are able to be preserved this way. If you don't treat cranberries with sugar, they can also be very bitter and sort of inedible. They're so great with sugar, but sort of less so without. So what I have for you guys today are uncured cranberries. I'd like you guys to each try one and tell me what you think. You may not love it, but it's not going to kill you.
It's going to be bitter.
And that's why you guys are here, is for me to test things out on you.
So is this
And
like
you know what I should have
my
had is a
goodness.
spitting thing.
Yeah, you could have
You know, I've got
Makes you pucker.
I've got an empty cup back here. Hold on.
It
If
really
you
makes
need to spit it out or get rid of it,
Oh, wow,
you're
that
welcome
is-
to throw it there.
I like that better than the olive, though.
You like that better than the olive?
I do
Way
too.
to go.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have different taste buds, I think.
Yeah, I like the olives a lot better.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
It's bitter and very tart.
Bitter and extremely tart, right?
Great
And
combination.
Really makes you pucker kind of tart. I understand why they say tartness makes you pucker now after eating those.
Yeah, it's very intense, right? So the mixture of sugar, in the case of cranberries, is something that's going to make them more edible. And so in a way, that like expands our food sources, right? We probably wouldn't be eating handfuls of cranberries, but we consume huge amounts of cranberries as a culture because we can, cure them essentially. And so one of the major functions of curing is to make food more edible and more delicious in some kind of a way. Okay, last one here.
This one looks good.
This one,
We're
I
finally
saved,
getting to this
I
one.
saved the best
Yeah,
for
save the
last.
best for last.
So another thing that we talk about a lot of times with curing is cured meats. And in fact, if you've heard the word curing, I'm betting it's in relation to meat in some way.
Oh, yeah.
What color are cured meats?
Red, usually?
Yeah, reddish pinkish, right? Kind of classic. And non-cured meat can be very pale in color or gray in color and can kind of weird people out, I think, when they see it. Even though that's totally natural meat, but we're so used to that red color. And what that is typically, or in the past, it was always nitrate or nitrite salts that you would mix with the meat in order to prevent this one particular kind of bacteria, Clostridium botulinum, from growing. Have you guys ever heard of botulism?
I was just going to say
Yeah.
it probably causes botulism, which
Yeah.
is like being paralyzed.
Yeah, it's a
like some
bacterial
kind of
infection that
muscles.
can cause major muscular dystrophy.
Yeah.
Really a nasty thing. And these bacteria, Clostridium botulinum, are everywhere. They're all over the place. Guaranteed they're in the studio right now. But typically we don't have to worry about them. Under certain conditions though, for example, when they're consuming meat, they can produce these spores that cause botulism. You might also hear about botulism if you learn about canning. If you can something poorly, incorrectly, you can cause the growth of Clostridium botulinum. Canning is a very safe process as long as you follow the procedure, right?
So if you're eating like a can of soup or something and you open it up and it doesn't look right, then it might have not been canned correctly. Or
Yes, although I will say, like the canning companies that we have are extreme. I would say the incidence of botulinum is probably less than 0.001%.
I eat a lot of canned soup, so I just want to make
Canned soup, you are totally fine. This is more if you can stuff yourself
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
in your house.
I'm safe.
My grandma
the-
cans peaches and does.
We actually can cranberry and raspberry preserves at my house. My roommates and I do it, and it's a ton of fun and really great. And we pulled jelly that was like 3 years old off the shelf the other day, and it tastes so perfect and good. So it's really a cool process. But anyways, just getting back to the meat briefly, one thing I wanted to mention with this is you hear a lot about uncured meat and about nitrates and nitrites being bad for you and causing cancer. And while there is some research out there to show that, it's very disputed. So I don't want to really take a stance one way or the other. But this package, when I bought it, said uncured meat on it. But really all that means when you see it in the store is they didn't use these special salts, nitrates or nitrites. But if we could skip to the next slide here. Oh, that's cured meat. One more. Okay, uno más, sorry. So this is just the back of a package, and I don't know how clear it is on your guys' screen. I blocked out the company name, but you should be able to see under ingredients, it lists beef as the first ingredient, water is the second ingredient, but then you get vinegar, which is an acid, kosher salt, which is obviously salt, and then you get honey right afterwards.
Sugar.
So literally the three things that I said are part of curing, acids, salts, and sugars, all used to do this. So this is totally cured meat. So I just wanted
marketing
to, it's that
thing.
marketing thing, like
Ah.
curing means nitrates and nitrites to us, and since they've been associated through science with cancer in some kind of a way, people are scared of nitrates and nitrites.
Right, yeah.
So we say it's uncured, don't worry, but really to eat meat and preserve meat, we need to cure it, and curing is a good thing. And before you make a call on nitrates or nitrites, I strongly recommend you do some research on your own. But the bigger point here, guys, is that just so much of the food that we eat is affected by this curing process. And we have a wider range of things that we can't eat because of it. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. Any questions before we wrap up?
Are we allowed to eat
Can
that?
we
That's
eat
what I was
it?
about to ask.
Oh, did I not let you guys eat it?
No, I've been staring at
Go
it.
ahead. Go ahead. Come on, I should let you
Alright.
guys do that at the beginning. I guess I'll take one too there. What the hey? All right, well, thank you guys so much for joining us here in the Homework Hotline Science Studio. We'll see you back in the other one in just a minute.
A lot of people think you have to be really good at numbers. And that's not really true. You do have to be good at solving problems. So we take students through all the basic fundamentals of accounting and hope to give them enough skills to go out and work in an entry-level accounting position.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Oh, where?
Oh, hi, we're back.
welcome back.
We were just discussing which questions we were going to answer. So let's first give you our contact information, just in case that you haven't gotten it before. You can kind of see above me is the phone number. You can definitely get in contact with us. Phone, best way to get a hold of us. But you can also send those questions in via social media. Let's give you that one more time. You can contact us on Facebook or Twitter at EG Homework. You can text us 970-680-3771, or you could email the questions to us at homework@emilygriffith.edu. And as we were doing, let's go back to Jeff. And I think we were trying to figure out what questions we could
we were
answer
trying to
here.
figure out which one. I was trying to find the quadratic one that you guys were wondering, but
Yeah, I saw that one. That one looked like a fun one.
oh, okay. Well, I don't know if this is
That's
it.
okay.
This is I don't know. This has let's see. It says PA,
Oh, you
PB,
might do this one.
and PC are tangents. One circle has the radius of 4. The other has radius 2. How are PC, PB, and PA related? And it's got these.
So PA.
I really think this is one for you.
Yeah.
I know you've answered a lot of them, but
One circle has a radius 4, the other has a radius 2. All right, I'm gonna have to pull this up on my
kinda- yeah,
computer.
oh,
kinda-
I found the quadratic one.
Oh, you did? Oh.
Yeah, if you want to think about that one.
Okay, let me think about that one for a second.
Okay.
That's just a good way to explain it.
It's from, it says November 15th on there.
November 15th.
Yeah. I think I pulled it up from our email. It's close to the top. It's
Close
like
to the
maybe 4 or 5 down.
Oh, right here. Is this math? Find
A, B, and C.
Oh, that one? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Sorry for doing your job for you, Jeff.
Oh, that's okay. I don't know what a quadratic equation is, so it's a good thing. So, and I can't even click on this either. Huh? Let's see here. Oh, there we go. Okay, it says find A, B, and C so that the graph of the quadratic function f parentheses x equals ax squared plus bx plus c has a vertex at -2, 1, and passes through the point 0 and -3.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
that's all yours.
Cut to my screen, and I'm going to do this one. Okay, a couple things to know about quadratic functions. What makes a function quadratic is the power. If you have a function or an equation that has a power of 2 on your variable, that means it's quadratic. And there are a few forms of quadratic functions that are commonly used just because of their usefulness. And I'll just get into 2 of those forms that we're going to use today. The general form is ax squared plus bx plus c. And that's actually what we're asked to find right now is ax squared, or we want to define the a, b, and c of that. So a, b, and c are just kind of the coefficients. And we'll say that this equals y. That'll maybe also help us figure this out. And then the other form that I will share with you right now is called vertex form. And it's still a quadratic function because it still has the squared on the variable. It has that power of 2, but it looks a little bit different. And part of why this form is useful is because h and k represent the coordinates of the vertex. So if you can see what h and k are, you know the coordinates of the vertex. Now, we're actually going to use this today to help us figure out the general form. Now, we don't really have enough information. They told us that the vertex is -2, 1, and it passes through the point 0, -3. One other thing that I should actually maybe point out is this C right there, that is the y-intercept. We actually already have the y-intercept in this equation because the y-intercept always occurs, and I'm going to draw a little graph here so you can see. The y-intercept, wherever that crosses, and I'm just going to kind of put a little spot right there, wherever that crosses, if you kind of follow it down to the x-axis, the x-coordinate at that y-intercept is always going to be 0. And then whatever your y-coordinate is at that point would be your coordinate. And so we were actually given right now this y-intercept. So we already know what our c is. Our c is -3. So we know that one. So we know c is -3. which leaves us to figure out what A and B are. So we're going to use the information that we have to try and figure out what A and B are. So I'm going to go to this vertex form, and one of the ways that we use algebra to help us solve things is that we can, or equations to help us solve things, is we can fill in all of the things that we do know, and Nathan talks about this a lot with geometry questions, is we fill in all of the things we do know, and then we try to find the unknown by solving for it algebraically. So if I can fill in every letter, or replace every letter with a number, except for one, that I can solve. I can use that equation to solve. So I actually, with the information I have, I'm going to use this vertex form to help me solve for A. So I'm going to leave A as A. The H and K, again, those represent the the vertex. Our vertex was given, so this vertex -2, 1, that H is going to be -2, and the K is going to be 1. And so I'm going to replace my H with -2, so minus -2 squared plus K, which was 1. And then I also have an X and a Y coordinate, which was given over here with my Y-intercept. So my 0 is my X and my -3 is the Y. So I'm going to replace X with 0, and then Y I'm replacing with -3. So that kind of looks complicated, but basically I've replaced all of my variables with numbers that were given to me in the problem. Now what my job is to simplify and to isolate the A, because then that'll help me find what A is. So I'm going to say A, and then 0 minus -2, that's going to be the same thing as +2, 0 plus 2, or 2, and then plus 1 over here equals -3. And then using my order of operations, I can simplify this 2 squared to 4. So it's A times 4, or in other words, we'll say 4A. And I'm doing a lot of this algebra pretty quickly just because of the time that we have left. But solving for A, I'm going to subtract 1 from both sides. And then I end up having 4A on the left and -4 on the right. And then finishing this out and solving for A, I end up getting -1. So kind of going back to what we were trying to find here is now I have my A, I have my C, but I have to find my B. So thinking about what I was saying before, where we want to replace all of our variables except for one in an equation, and then we can solve for it, we're going to use this general form here to help us do that. So I'm going to go quickly to do this, but my A, since I figured that one out, was -1. We're going to replace that with -1. I'm going to use the same X that I used before in the last one. So we'll say 0, and that's going to be squared, and then plus, and B is the one I'm trying to find, but 0 is still my X, and then plus C, which again, my C, if you see up there, it was -3. It's going to be equal to my Y, which I'm going to use the same Y that I used before, which was also -3. And then I'm going to, again, simplify and solve for B, so, or isolate it. So 0 squared is going to give us 0 plus B times 0 actually also gives us 0. And then, hang on 1 second here. Let's just do this. We'll say B plus 0, B times 0, and then we'll subtract 3 from both sides. That also gives us 0. Essentially what ends up happening is that B is going to be 0 to make this true. So these, and I'm sorry that I'm rushing this, but we're running out of time. A, B, and C. A is -1, B is 0, C is -3. Just use the information you have, plug it into equation, solve for what you don't have. All right, so trivia answer, I'm sorry.
Trivia answer is, what peculiar festival takes place in Fruita, Colorado in May? It is the Mike the Headless Chicken Festival.
Oh my gosh.
I know, it's kind of morbid. But on September 10th, 1945, a farmer named Lloyd Olson went out to his yard and he lopped off, or he thought he did, lopped off the head of his chicken, but the chicken survived. He runs around, so they toured around everybody, and that's became this festival in Fruita, Colorado.
Hail to the chicken. All right, well, we got to say goodbye. We'll miss you next week, so happy Thanksgiving. We'll see you 2 weeks from now on Tuesday, Wednesday, 4:30 to 5:30. Thank you, guys. Bye.